Disney's purchase of Lucasfilm and subsequently the right to Star Wars is one of the biggest deals in entertainment history. Since that day, Disney themselves have produced 18 movies and TV shows set in the Star Wars universe. Some have been widely acclaimed, and some not so much. But there has been one show that has grabbed the world's attention, and that show is Andor. First released in 2022, Andor has reached widespread acclaim from both inside and outside the Star Wars fandom. The first season received 8 Emmy nominations, and concluding on the 13th of May 2025, Season 2 has become one of the most streamed TV shows in the world. Now, with Disney's track record, that shouldn't be too surprising. Shows like The Mandalorian and the Clone Wars spin-offs have also been widely praised. So, what makes Andor different? Well, it's not their success that's surprising, it's their approach. Because while every other Star Wars show has tried to be Star Wars, the creators of Andor wanted their show to be anti-Star Wars. So how does a show that breaks every rule Disney has for Star Wars create arguably the most widely acclaimed Star Wars show ever made? Take a look at these screenshots. They're taken from 4 different Star Wars TV shows. Now, which one stands out to you? Well, if you picked this one, then you might know which show this screenshot is from. Yep, no surprises there. One of the most striking differences Andor shows from its very first scene is it looks really different. While these 3 other screenshots look clean and polished, Andor is dark, gritty, and unpolished. And that look was key during production.
You gotta come up with a new aesthetic, you don't wanna do anything you did before, so you're searching for things. We're both very, very particular about how things go, but you know, what's it look like? What's the architecture like? What's the economy? Coming up with the culture, the vibe.
By employing various film techniques, Andor separates itself from how Star Wars has normally approached filming in the 2020s. The first major place in which they differ is location.
But I think this approach of grounding the visual effects in Andor within real-world physicality and locations plays a big role in why the show feels so real and lived in.
By using real-world locations more frequently, the audience can grasp the world they live in more easily.
These sensory details go, I think, a long way towards making it feel like the characters exist within a multi-dimensional space and aren't just standing on a set or in front of a green screen.
The lower use of green screen is a significant departure from traditional Star Wars filmmaking, and more so recently with the Volume, a 360-degree LED screen used to create virtual environments before filming rather than the look being developed post-production. Shows like The Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, and Ahsoka have all used this new workspace. But for Andor creator Tony Gilroy, the Volume was never the plan.
What people don't understand about the Volume is it's an amazing tool, but it's a completely different workflow. You have to do all your post-production first in the Volume, and then you put the actors into it. If you're shooting a show the other way, our workflow goes entirely the other way. We shoot, sometimes we have a little piece of set, and it's set extension, it's all built. Our post is epic. It's really hard to change your workflow from one to the other. There's times you wish you could use the Volume, but it's just, you're not set up for it.
Sure.
We're old school. Everybody who was really on it had been doing it this way. I've been a location around the world, director and filmmaker for the whole time. It's comfortable for me. I know it. The idea of learning a whole new system and the idea of making 24 hours of show in a box didn't appeal.
And that traditional workflow not only lends itself to the look of the show, but also the feel. Andor uses camera movement to provide the audience with a feel that what they are seeing is real.
The crackle of a campfire, the feeling of brokenness to a piece of equipment. These are the sensory details that make the world the characters exist in feel like you could touch it and feel it because they're touching it and feeling it.
By grounding the show in real-world locations, sparingly using VFX to build out the world, and utilizing significantly more physical props to make the world feel tangible, this creates a universe that feels much more real to the audience, as opposed to other Star Wars shows where the goal is to make the universe feel magical and fantasy. And using that perception of reality is not the only way the audience is able to connect with the characters, because the story of Andor revolves around the type of character characters that other shows refuse to acknowledge. If we take a look at every Star Wars project released since Disney's purchase of Star Wars, almost every show and movie revolve around either the Jedi, the Sith, or recognizable characters from the original trilogy. Everyone except these two, Rogue One and its prequel, Andor. But why would a Star Wars show not have things like Jedi or lightsabers or any of the things that actually make it Star Wars?
Imagination, man. It's imagination, ambition, and a real, I know it's such a cliche, but a real need to disrupt. You have to disrupt shit like crazy. You have to turn it upside down and say, well, let's do the opposite of that. Always looking for something that, in every scene and in every moment, what haven't we done before? What's new? And so our mandate was to make a new lane, try to bring in an audience that may be Star Wars reluctant or Star Wars resistant, and try to do a different kind of show for people who may not, and do a show that you didn't have to watch Star Wars to ever enjoy.
And that is one of the most radical approaches that has ever been taken with the Star Wars universe. By approaching the universe with the priority of story, themes, and characters, you ensure that regardless of whether the audience is or is not aware of the Star Wars universe, they can enjoy the show regardless.
It's stepping away from this huge feeling of destiny, fate, and mythos that runs through most of the canon.
You got to be really ambitious and not safe. It's safety that's the enemy of expanding things, I think.
And by stepping away from many recognizable characters, it creates another aspect where Andor differs from the rest. A common practice that has taken place in both Star Wars and Marvel projects alike is the cameo. For a while, this technique of plucking a random recognizable character and placing it into a popular story created shockwaves around the world. But as more and more and more cameos were being placed in every movie and TV show, audiences began to feel tired. Take the Book of Boba Fett, where the show brought back legendary bounty hunter Cad Bane from the Clone Wars TV show. A great idea, but by looking at the greater timeline, this would mean that Cad Bane in this scene is at least over 120 years old. And when misplaced logic like that begins to creep into cameo placement, you can understand why the fans are beginning to tire of it. It has become less of a cool element and more like a nostalgia bait. But Andor didn't take this approach.
I mean, bring back the legacy characters is always a complicated process between money and scheduling, and we could never, ever be cynical about it. We have to take it more seriously than anybody's ever taken it. We're never winking, we're never kidding it. And so we have this mix of people who know nothing about Star Wars on our show, and then we have a bunch of people on the show that are huge nerds, and it's the marriage of knowledge and history mixed with a real ambition to take it someplace else with a hopefully respect for, I want the respect of that audience. Now, I do read what they, there's no way of doing it and not being controversial.
Yeah.
There's no way. It's impossible.
And that seriousness towards the world and the show they're crafting doesn't allow for cheap gimmicks to include a character whose toy will sell well. All the choices made towards the characters that are included in the show are made to help realize the story they are trying to tell. So if the story is not centered around a group of universally recognizable heroes, then who did they pick?
It's a story about revolution, and it's a story about people, normal people, being thrust into the revolution. We don't have any, we don't have any Jedi, we don't have any lightsabers, right. We don't have any of that stuff. We don't have royal family. This is, as we say, it's a show that takes place in the kitchen, not in the dining room.
Although after finishing the show you can see these characters as heroes or villains, there isn't anything innately special about any of them. They are all normal people living in a galaxy far, far away.
The theme of the rebellion being driven and fueled by regular people isn't just created by the writing and what the show's about, it's reinforced by the style of the show. The regularness and everydayness of the characters is conveyed through the show's commitment to creating this sense of reality.
By selecting regular people as the focal characters in the story, it once again grounds the show. It poses questions to the audience as to how they would react if placed in the same scenario, and the connection between characters and audience is stronger for it. But although these characters are ordinary people, they don't make your average day-to-day life choices. Andor takes ordinary people and places them into one of the most politically complex worlds in sci-fi.
I start the season
in a wedding in space. And then we go somewhere deeply political.
But this was never out of nowhere. Star Wars and politics have always gone hand in hand.
Star Wars, if you go back to its genesis in that very first film, was political. Politics has always played a part in it.
And that's not just referring to the prequel trilogy. The original trilogy was more than just a battle of good versus evil. It was centered around a rebellion rising to face an oppressive empire, a deeply political idea purposefully employed by George Lucas.
The great thing about Star Wars is I had a vessel that I could throw anything into.
Yeah.
But one of the biggest problems you have in science fiction with movies, they don't have it in books or anything, but in movies, you have to create a real world.
Yeah.
And it's a real world that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And you have to do what Kurosawa used to say is, it has to have immaculate reality.
Yeah.
Even though it's not
I like
real.
that term.
And the political canvas that Andor had available to them was huge.
You can deal with an incredible number of issues that are contemporary, and some of them are very radioactive.
You can discuss whether it was right or maybe it wasn't right.
What if we examine the complex moral and ethical dilemmas faced by each individual as they feel cornered into fighting for what they believe in?
And creator Tony Gilroy not only drew inspiration from Star Wars' pre-existing politics, he also looked back through human history.
Empire is cross history, cross cultures. Empire is really the ugly side of our humanity.
I've been fascinated with revolution and betrayal and war and leadership my whole life. And so I can cherry pick all through every revolution that I know about.
Tony Gilroy wrote many of the characteristics of the political landscape based off our own history, because although Star Wars is set in a fictional galaxy far, far away, the stories of Star Wars are ultimately human stories. They are about characters making choices and doing what they think is right. And when creating a world that is so politically complex, the impact on the audience can only be felt when the characters themselves are just as complex.
I don't know, I was attracted to what seems like contradictions in him. I mean, he's killing people and he's doing wrong things and he's doing good things. But they're really not contradictions, they're very human.
Human beings are more than two characters. We are different when we meet our family and when we are with our friends and when we are, it's sort of a natural state.
It is some things that triggers for one person a dedication to the revolution doesn't trigger it for someone else.
When characters are written with unique personalities, culture, and circumstances, it allows for the perspectives of each character to also be completely unique. Andor spends entire episodes on dialogue, internal conflict, and bureaucratic tension. It utilizes the kind of slow pacing rarely tolerated in franchise TV. Its arcs are novelistic and thematic, not just plot driven, and by combining detailed character traits with unique circumstances, it allows Andor's writers to make choices for the characters that can be morally grey. Mixed in with an equally complex political landscape, Andor can provide powerful storytelling that is both unpredictable and suspenseful. A unique combination to the Star Wars universe. However, for all the unique characteristics of Andor, the unique cinematic style, the choice of characters, and the depth of political storytelling, none of these characteristics would exist without the brilliant quality of Andor's writing.
First of all, it was very well written. It was Tony Gilroy who wrote it. It's like Star Wars for grown-ups.
Ultimately, Andor is a well-constructed, well-written, suspenseful sci-fi spy thriller that also happens to be a Star Wars show.
Having a show that is written to such a high level can create a place where anything can be examined and expressed.
For all the hard work and all the trouble that it causes your life and everything, that's what makes it worth it creatively. The landscape and the size of the canvas is really an extraordinary thing to play with.
And not only is this great for the show, but for everyone involved in making it.
But you get such a window into a history, a shared history. And what that does then is interweave within the relationships that are written between mother and daughter, between husband and wife. You also have people from the outside coming in, so you have a window through Luthen or even Davos Skulden. You see within the same culture, you see really massive differences between maybe the Mothmas and the Skuldans.
And none of this would have been possible without series creator Tony Gilroy.
How many screenwriters have you talked to? I mean, we live in a 125-page ghetto, really. I mean, that's where your whole life, your attention span, everything, your mind is just organized around 130 pages. And it's a good way to learn, and we've certainly many people have done it well, but boy, oh boy, to be liberated from that. I'm getting to talk about so many important things in a really vivid, exciting, anxious story, in a real ripping yarn. I get to talk about all the things that I've been accumulating my whole life long and probably wouldn't have an opportunity to speak about.
When a Star Wars show is well written and every moment of dialogue, every scene, every story beat is constructed with a clear, uncompromised vision, the result is not only a great piece of art and social commentary, but it shows that Star Wars can be used as a medium to achieve something more than just entertain. Andor is a Star Wars show that is approaching the universe with serious consideration for the characters within it. Where Star Wars projects of the 2020s prefer the glossy, often green screen heavy production, Andor embraces physical sets, brutalist architecture, and location shooting, appearing more like Blade Runner or an Emmy-winning drama than Star Wars. Where almost every other Star Wars project has been centered around the Force and the royal families, Andor does not. There are no lightsaber battles, chosen ones, or mystical prophecies. It moves away from the mythic fantasy and replaces it with grounded human stakes. And subsequently, there are almost no nods to previous characters, planets, or lines. Andor avoids Easter eggs and cameos, which are a staple of most modern Star Wars projects, and it doesn't rely on nostalgia. In fact, it actively avoids it. While other Star Wars shows focus on their stories of knights in shining armor, Andor once again does the opposite. The main character of Cassian Andor isn't a chosen hero. He's a cynical, reluctant participant in history. The show centers on people like a prison inmate, a desk-bound Imperial, and a tired senator. And the show is not just about these individuals. It's about the system that they live in. Where other Star Wars shows often boil down to good rebels versus bad empire, Andor digs deep into the nuances of revolution, infighting, exploitation, radicalization, and moral ambiguity, taking their selected ordinary people and creating a world that informs character, where you can witness each character's lived experience in this galaxy far, far away. And to tie it all together, for arguably the first time in the Star Wars franchise, Andor is written and creatively led to the highest quality of prestige television. It shares more similarities with shows like The Wire than it does with shows like The Clone Wars. The dialogue is layered, thematic, and often poetic. It draws audiences in and encourages them to empathize with its characters, asking themselves what they would do if placed in this fictional world. And by doing everything differently to how Disney traditionally has, Andor is now considered as potentially one of the greatest stories in the Star Wars franchise.